The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another D-Link webinar. I never get tired of saying those words. Today we are talking about wired versus wireless. It's the big mammoth showdown that everyone's been waiting for. The battle royale between wired networks and wireless networks. Here with me, as always, is our technical pre-sales engineer, Craig Kirby.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Greg. So, I mean, I've pitched this as the battle royale, but it's not really that. We're mostly going to be focused on wired networks and how, in today's environment, with so many people working from home, with so much gaming going on, with so much streaming, how a wired network can help you out with things like lag. When you're working from home, it can help you out with security, how you can reduce interference on your Wi-Fi network. So we're going to go and get into each of those topics in a little bit more depth as we move on. We're not here today to badmouth Wi-Fi in any way. All we're going to
certainly not.
All we're going to do is talk about how wired can give you certain advantages. So if we look, we don't get very many opportunities at D-Link to be philosophical. Obviously, we're a networking company, and it's not really prophetic, but we kind of live by the modicum here. If you can use a wired connection, just as simple as that. If you can wire it up. And we're not demeaning Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is awesome. We love Wi-Fi, but there are just a few advantages in having a wireless connection that we'll obviously go into more detail as we move on. And what is it?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And why use a wireless over a wired connection? There's obviously loads of cases why you might choose wireless connections. What do you actually really get with a wired connection? Well, we'll go into it in a little bit, but really it's just about kind of latency, speed, throughput. There's a lot that you can actually do with wired connections, but it also means that there's a lot of things that, especially in a business scenario, in a business case environment, that changes how wired connections actually work. I mean, we've had lots of webinars about fiber cabling connections and the kind of things running PoE and all these kind of different cables. This is why, as a business, we kind of steer towards wired connections, but it's very different also when you're looking at consumer environments as well. So it's a bit of a mishmash of how things blend together as well. So it's a bit of a grey area, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think wired sometimes gets a little bit of a bum deal. It's kind of I've got a Mac and I don't even have an Ethernet port. But the first thing that I know that most Mac owners do is go and get themselves a nice little USB hub so that they can plug in the Ethernet.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And we do sell USB hubs. Just a little plug there for us. But yeah, so it's just best to have both options. It's best to have that hybrid, that ability to do both. It's silly to limit yourself to one or the other. So, what is it that allows you to have a wired network? Well, most routers come with about 4 ports. Would you say, Craig? I reckon about 4 ports nowadays. You see.
Yeah, it's 3 or 4. It's always one of those 3, isn't it? And one of those 2.
Yeah, I look over at my router now, and everything that I've got connected to it, it's just not enough in this day and age. TV, PC, Blu-ray, console. Lucky enough to have the PlayStation 5 wired in over there. So it's made switches much more of a consumer-based product and something that a lot of people should consider having in their homes with the number of devices that we have that we can wire up to it. So switches are key components of all networks, connecting PCs, printers, access points, phones, lights, servers, and all sorts of other hardware. And what they allow you to do is send and receive information, access shared resources, just in the most highly efficient way, and the most secure way, which I know is top of a lot of people's priorities at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Switches. You said you use a switch, Alan?
I've got
use it for your
yes,
PlayStation thing?
yes. I have a certain brand of switch.
I'm sure it's D-Link. We don't need to guess. I'm sure it's D-Link.
it is the D-Link. I just have one of the DGS-108 switches, one of the normal ones. I don't need PoE myself. So I've just got a DGS-108 underneath there, just because free ports left on the Ethernet after you plug the modem into the router, because I've got a separate modem and router. It's just not enough. So, and the DGS-108, I've got a couple of spare ports just in case I do buy anything else. So rather than go for the 5 port, I went for the 8 just for the future connectivity there.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same position as you. Behind my TV cabinet, I've got a little small 4-port switch, but it's not PoE. Same as you, it's not PoE. So I'm powering things like my PlayStation and the Nintendo and a couple other things as well that are going through it. And obviously, you have to sacrifice one of those connections to going to the router as well. So it's kind of taking the router and expanded on a few things just to get it cabled. So, I mean, certainly if you're in that gaming scenario, it's really nice to have it very low latency. So you can watch Netflix through it. You can watch all other kind of streaming services through the PlayStation. That's how I do it myself. And then what I tend to do is my laptops and things like that around the house are obviously I try and be as mobile as possible, because like for this, for example, I've moved out from the living room and I've come into the sort of bedroom to do this presentation where it's nice and quiet. So I have to rely on my wireless connection to do that. So it's very important to try and get a bit of everything going at the same time, because it's worth it in the long run. But one of the things that I didn't do, I didn't plan ahead myself, was I didn't get a PoE switch behind the TV. So that's really a problem, because when it comes to the lockdown happening the first, my wife had to bring her IP phone home because she's working from the living room as well, you see. So she has to have that. Yeah, so that's another plug I've had to do. So that's another injector that's gone in, and then I obviously need the phone as well. It's that kind of thing. Now we're all working from home and things like that. It's you kind of realize you're running out of plug space. So
I think exactly the same, Craig. Is that I bought one of our PTZ cameras, which I could power through the switch if I would have bought PoE, just to keep an eye on the dog while I'm out during the day. But obviously not such an issue since lockdown, because now I work from home and I can just spy them out the corner of my eye there. So. So Craig's mentioned so many of the things that are on the page here that you can connect to a switch. The primary ones being cameras, PCs, games consoles, home entertainment systems, wide access points. You can power your access point via your switch, and that one that's always forgotten is the VoIP phone. The VoIP phone is, as you say, Craig. Power it by the switch, and then you can work somewhere where there isn't a plug socket within immediate reach, and I think that's a good win, isn't it? That's great for using a switch to power your VoIP phone, your cameras, etc. So yes,
it is, and a lot of people are traditionally moving towards VoIP services now.
100%.
Reason being, they're so cheap to run as well. Calling abroad, if you've got family abroad, as I have, I've got family all over the world. So, running it on these old packages, yes, okay, we've got WhatsApp these days, that obviously helps and things like that. But try using that to India, it just doesn't work. So you have to call landlines, right? There's good data in places over there, but you might be lucky enough to get a landline.
It's not.
So it's very helpful.
Yeah, it's not great to Holland. Craig, I can attest to when the wife calls her family. So I'm sure that India being so much further away, it's not going to India either. But yes, VoIP is really gaining popularity, and just so easy to use and switch over, and so cost effective. So yeah, definitely going to be one. And with this working from home stuff becoming more of the time, whether it's permanent every day of the week, whether it's just 3 days a week, just having that VoIP phone powered at home, yeah, it's just a no-brainer, isn't it? It's just
yeah,
great for
absolutely.
So moving on from the devices, what sort of speeds can you get on your switches? So I don't think I'm being too unkind with my picturing here, in that I think we can say that fast Ethernet, although it can probably still manage most of today's tasks, if you've got a fast internet switch with the broadband speed that you get at home, it's not the end of the world. I wouldn't be running out of the door to upgrade to gigabit, but I would be considering it fairly soon in the future. So we go from the snail there, and then we go all the way up to the super fast race car, which is your 25, 40, 100 gigabit, which a little bit out of the range when it comes to home networks, but they are there. And you will be seeing them in what we deem as prosumers households probably sometime soon. There are people who just love that level, and maybe slightly overkill, but they just want to be future proof. They want to be ready and take advantage of every upgrade in speed that happens. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to give you a quick rundown of that, the 10100, we call it the class of snails. Certainly, if we just want to have data sending and receiving and things, it's not really what we want to use. However, still very good for IP surveillance, because our cameras themselves, they don't really require a great deal of streaming service. So certainly you can use a fast Ethernet for that. 1 gigabit, let's face it, it's everywhere now. We always 1 gigabit is pretty much in any router you buy, any device that you purchase. It's going to be a 1 gigabit copper connection. 2.5 is very interesting. Actually, 2.5 is quite new. It's probably one of the newest on here, actually.
Yeah, it's not the fastest, but it's that interim between 1 gig and 10 gig, isn't it? And I think it's mainly Wi-Fi 6 that's caused the rise in popularity for it. Correct, Craig?
It has, yeah. So I think we've discussed this on previous webinars, but basically 10 gig is obviously what is tried to be pushed through an Ethernet cable. And you can certainly do that for a Cat6 cable. However, a lot of places are actually still installing standard Cat5 cables or Cat5e, which means you have to rip all of the cabling out to redo it to get those kind of speeds, which isn't always the best thing you can do. It's expensive. You've got to get somebody in, and if in a big environment, there's a lot of cables, and it's not without its costs. But to be able to increase from 1 gigabit to 2.5, I mean, you think about it, you're doubling the speed of what you're getting, and you're not replacing the cable out. That's really what it comes down to. Okay, yes, you're not going to get 10 gig speed through it, unless you do replace the cable at some point. But it's a good interim if you can just buy the devices to get that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the conversation that's being had at the moment, isn't it? Because people are looking at 10 gig and then they're looking at 2.5, and there isn't that much of a price differential between the two. But as you've just said, Craig, you've got to put all new cables in. So not everybody takes that into consideration when they're looking at this. They think, oh, I'll just go for the 10 gig because it's only X pounds more, but don't forget to factor in the cost of the cabling.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
and then obviously, like you say, the 100 gig and the 25 gig, we're really talking about backbones here, network backbones, distribution switches, going back to cores and things like that. So this is where heavy usage is really going to be in play. That's business environment right now.
Yeah, and if you want to learn more about those kind of speeds, then we've got the network redundancy one that we did, and there's a few other webinars that are available where we go into more depth. The sort of places like the university campus is one of the ones we use as the example for that sort of speed. But we recommend 1 gigabit, and that's mainly because it's pennies more than fast Ethernet. You're not really going to be paying much more for gigabit. So go for gigabit on your first switch. that's the message from us here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, just at this time, I always forget at the start of the webinar, but if there are any questions, please just pop them in the sidebar, and we'll get to them in the questions section at the end. We appreciate there's a lot of feeds and speeds in here. We try our absolute best to explain it all, but if there's anything we missed, just ask the question, and we'll get to it at the end. Okay. So we often talk about unmanaged switches in this sort of our office environment here. So there's 7 people working in this office. I think for 7 people you could quite happily get away with a managed switch. You probably want to go for a slightly higher port size than the port count than a 5 or 8 port switch, maybe up to 24, 26, something like that. I'm sure that if this is Craig's office, Craig would have a core smart switch and then run some access switches off the edge of it that were unmanaged rather than having that manage the network. But it is possible to pardon me, power a small office with this, and so an unmanaged switch could easily power a home office as well. That's that wouldn't be a problem at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you're not so much a power user, maybe you're not really in competition with each other for bandwidth, then certainly an unmanaged switch is absolutely fine. Just to link the PCs together, plug that to a gateway, and off you go. To extend the amount of ports, certainly if you're kind of working from home, you probably want a few extra ports for whatever devices that you've brought home with you from the office, just to get you up and running. But yes, really, I think probably in an office environment, like I say, I'd probably go for a smart switch myself. But the thing with unmanaged switches is that they do have a range of PoE as well.
Yes.
And when I say a range, we're talking about some big budgets on some of them. Some of them come with max power budgets, which means that you can plug in a device to any one of those ports and you can get up to 30 watts of power coming through it. So great for things like IP surveillance. And when I say IP surveillance, I'm talking about things like PTZs, something that requires a bit more power to actually get connected and things like that. And there you go, PoE.
Yep.
So
I can see the next slide, and I can see where you were going. So
we segued very well there, I think.
Yes,
very well.
Let's the power of the segue. Yeah.
Yes. So let's have a quick chat about PoE then. Obviously, PoE means power over Ethernet, and we're sending our power from our switch all the way down to the cable, and at the end we have whatever device we want to power, whether it's an IP surveillance camera, whether it's an access point. So really what we want is to make sure we have the right amount of power that's going through it. So we need to make sure the standards are correct. Now at D-Link here, we always do it to the standard for PoE when it comes to our devices, because we know that that's the way for devices to be agnostic with the vendors they work with. And it also means that if there is any problems with the devices, you don't lose your warranty over it because you've used a passive PoE switch with a non-passive device. That's generally how it works.
Yeah.
So PoE goes standard AF, which is 15.4 watts, which is small cameras, maybe 2-3 megapixel up to 5 megapixel sort of things. And then going into the higher power ones with your PTZs and your motorized zooms, that might be around your 30 watts. And then above that now, we're actually going into the next way. So we've actually retroactively called it types 1 to 4. So AF is type 1, AT is type 2, and then BT is actually split into 2, which is a little bit confusing, which is why we just call it type 3 and type 4. Type 3 being up to 60 watts and type 4 being up to 90 watts of power. Imagine what you can power with that. I mean, we're talking radio dishes, cellular masts, and to be honest, we're kind of moving towards this smart home lifestyle now, where you can actually power things using splitters. So a splitter is actually what goes on the end of a PoE cable and can change how it's actually delivered. So you can actually power devices that aren't even PoE by design, like lights, light switches, and things like that. Anything really, as long as it's got the amount of wattage for it. So that's what you get now, and as more new builds are going up, rather than running all of these cables around for electricity and power cables and things like that, a lot of them are actually installing PoE right from the cabinets.
Well, it makes sense, doesn't it? You want cameras in your loft, Are you going to run all that wiring up there, or are you going to put a switch in the wall and then run the cable from there? It's just so much easier, isn't it? It's just makes
Yeah, absolutely. One cable coming out that can go up to sort of 80 to 100 meters,
perfect.
and that's it. It just plugs straight into the device.
Yeah, but I'm not going to be fully up to speed with this, Craig, until we get to 1.21 gigawatts and I can power my flux capacitor. That's what I'm waiting for.
Well, you need a long cable for that one. Just be aware of that.
It's got to go back 60 years. And I just a quick note. I do. It's always appreciated when they do go back and realise the error of their ways when it comes to naming conventions, because similar to Wi-Fi, Craig. I mean, wireless G, wireless N, wireless AC, and now we're on Wi-Fi 6, and then we'll have Wi-Fi 6E. But then I'm sure the next one will be Wi-Fi 7. So kudos to whoever is naming these, with a much more easier convention for us normies to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it can get very, very confusing.
Yes. So we're gonna look at an example here of this young lady whose son really wants to play on that rocking horse while she's working. Whether or not you work from home infrequently doesn't matter on what your sort of network requirements are. If it's just checking emails, or if you've got some really big downloads and uploads to do, the occasional video conference meeting, a basic office setup is probably going to be good enough for your needs. If your needs run into more of the constantly YouTube videos, massive NAS file transfers, sending massive design files through, then you might want to look at something a little bit higher powered than what we're talking about here. But this will sort probably 95% of the people who work at home. So when you're thinking about a wired network, we've got. I'll put all 5 of them up on the screen there. You got to think about how many ports you need. You got to think about the sort of speed that you want, because you do have that choice between fast Ethernet and gigabit that we've already been through. We thoroughly recommend just going for gigabit because the savings are minute between the two. So just bite the bullet and buy the gigabit. But the big decision, as we've both talked about, Craig and I both regretting not getting PoE, do you want PoE on your first switch? So that's the decision to make, because if you buy a PoE switch without PoE, you can buy injectors, and you can there is something you can do about it, or you can just sell that switch and buy a new switch. But your investment is less if you just buy the PoE in case you need it in the future. So we've got a few examples here. The first is one of our very most cost-effective switches. This is the Go Fast Ethernet desktop switch. It's a very small device. It is just Fast Ethernet, so it's 10100, and it comes with 5 extension ports on there. These models are plastic, which is why we can make them very cost-effective. So it is a good option in that area. You can get the Go switches also in 8 ports, and you can get, for a small amount extra, you can get the same Go switch in a gigabit model. Moving slightly up from that, this is the one that I have myself. I have an 8-port gigabit DGS-108. It's a very economical model, and it comes with the metal framework, which makes it just a little bit tougher than the plastic versions. Very good at heat dissipation. It's very, very quiet. I can barely hear it running, and I've got some very good use out of mine. And then the absolute top of the range when it comes to gigabit switches is the DGS-1026MP, and the MP stands for max PoE. So when we looked back on the PoE page, this is the switch that will give you the highest total PoE budget. I believe is it 370 watts, Craig, or am I? overestimate.
370 watts for a max power switch, 24 ports.
Yeah, so that is a lot of power, as Craig's already mentioned. It won't send your DeLorean back in time, but it will power a lot of devices, a lot of cameras around the house, your VoIP phones. You can do all that kind of stuff very, very easily. So if you are somebody who is very, very into future proofing, this would be the model for you. So then if we relay this into a home office setup, you'll see that because this is a generic home office setup for one or two people, I didn't go with the 1026, but I did go with the DGS-108P/M or max power if you need the extra power on there. So that will give you the 8 ports, the same as my DGS-108, but it does come with the added PoE version on there. So your internet comes in. I've recommended the Dir X 5460 router, which is our brand new Wi-Fi 6 router. Again, it's another model that I have experience of myself, and I highly recommend it to everyone. It is a bit of a beast. It's on the large side, but I'm sure that we all have somewhere nice that we can store it. Mine's stored behind the TV there, and connecting that up to your switch, and that leaves plenty of spaces on the switch for your VoIP phone, your home camera, connection to your office and servers, and then all of those devices that you run in your home entertainment center. So your TV, your console, your home cinema, your gaming PC, and any other example that you have there. And that's probably all of the wires in the switch taken up there. And that will give you a very nice setup and provide you with a pretty fast network. And we'll go into more of why the wired network is better than the wireless network through the next few slides.
Yeah, and another thing, Alan, just to be clear, there are a lot of people out there that are actually running fiber to the premises these days, and it's getting more and more common.
Yes.
So having that big pipe that's coming in from the internet means that you kind of want to make sure that none of your devices that are using these streams and downloading are bottle capped in any way. So, for example, if you've got a 1 gig meg fiber connection coming into the house, and you've only got a cable that only does 100 meg, but your device you're using supports a gigabit actual connection, then you're only ever going to get 100 meg out of that. You're not going to be able to utilize the whole speed and everything coming through. So, which would be a shame. It would be really a shame in that kind of environment, because you've certainly done all the investment to get that kind of speed, and you're just one small step away from getting it as well.
I check most days, Craig, to see when my local area has been upgraded, but unfortunately, it's not in the plan for now. I think the beauty of these super fast networks is that they don't seem to cost much more than what I pay for my 80 meg connection now. So I'll be more than happy to upgrade when it's available.
Yeah, I think we all will. I think we're all needing, and certainly this day and age, where everybody working from home, we all kind of see the benefits of getting that faster speed, getting something faster, no buffering, and so much easier, isn't it?
Yeah. I downloaded a presentation earlier. Sorry, not presentation. It was a PowerPoint document from the Office server, and it was 1.6 gig. So it was like it did take a while. It did take a while, and I mean my connection's pretty good, and I forgot about it, and I just let it go. And I think, we got there in the end, but it was a bit of a struggle. So the first thing we'll talk about as an advantage of the wired network is the security. So wired networks, they're just more secure than wired networks, and that's because the network is restricted to cabled connections. The network within a wired connection doesn't physically leave the building. I'm fairly sure, and I'm not trying to scare anyone here, but if your password is password 123, you've probably left it so that people can get on your Wi-Fi network, from a little bit away. We've all seen it on the detective shows that we watch, where people break into other people's Wi-Fi by guessing the passwords and stuff like that. So one of the major things about the wired network is the extra security that comes with it. Security will definitely be back on the agenda. It was a little bit lax in 2020. I'm sure you'll agree with me there, Craig. People sent home with laptops with thousands of personal details or HR records or all this, and you're sat there on your home network while your daughter is on TikTok and your son is streaming to YouTube, and you've got the personal details for all of your staff and pay records and sick records, all that kind of stuff, all that GDPR protected information on the same network as they are socially mediating, or whatever the plural of that is. So probably not.
Well, that's the dangerous thing, isn't it, Alan? Where you're all on what we call a flat network, where you have PCs that are being used by the kids, and you know, it happens. Even adults do it sometimes, where you open up an email or you go to a website or something like that maybe you got confused with something else, and before you know it, something's trying to be downloaded to your inbox. So you know, it happens.
Yeah. It's those bit.ly links, Craig, isn't it? Those link shortening services. They are very, very good at masking where they're taking you. And so anyone can fall for it. Even seasoned pros like me and Craig could fall for it if somebody sends us a bit.ly link or just a link shortener. You know, they could get us to open one of these sites. So you know, it's all about being as clever as you can and minimizing that exposure. And wired networks do help you out there.
Yes, and what you can do with these switches is we won't go so much into it today, but you can separate and segment your network by using things like VLANs, which will allow you in a smart switch in order to keep the traffic away from each other while still being able to go to your internet and things like that. And that's one of the benefits of that kind of system as well.
Yeah, definitely. Pardon me. Less interference is one of the major benefits of a wide network, because as you can see on the slide here, this slide is actually from a Wi-Fi 6 presentation, because big strides have been made in terms of limiting the interference that happens between networks. On Wi-Fi 6, it's called BSS colouring, and it's something that we've covered in previous webinars. So Wi-Fi 6 goes a long way to helping you by injecting your network with a specific colour that will be visible to your devices, and it kind of eliminates the overlap. But there are still other things that can affect a Wi-Fi network, and I'm sure if you live in something like a 3-story house, or you have I don't know, a converted loft or a converted cellar. You see most of those in America. You don't really see those so much here, but factors such as home layout really do play a part into interfering with your Wi-Fi network. Electrical interference, and just signal blocking objects. I think it was on the Wi-Fi planning tool. We talked about the height of ceilings, all that kind of stuff, Craig, where they can play a big part in how much interference that you get on your network.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've mentioned it before, but it's very difficult to know what's in the walls as well. That's one of the worst things is especially this kind of mesh that you get. I suffer from it here, certainly, from my Wi-Fi network, where the plasterboard is actually placed upon this like a chicken wire mesh, and it creates pretty much a Faraday cage effect where you can't penetrate with any wireless connection. So, and it's certainly, when we're talking about wired connections, we're not always just talking about a direct cable either. Sometimes we can be talking about using devices that can use electricity to pass things through, and having our wire connections going into these ports as well. So small things like this that are able to help with getting around it. And yes, of course, it's sometimes very difficult to run the cables. Sometimes it isn't. It's obviously going to be very dependent on each case by case scenario.
Yeah, I think the one good thing though, Craig, is that you probably will survive a nuclear war with your Faraday cage that you've got built in your.
Let's hope so. It's got to have one benefit, right?
Super fast. You will get increased speed on Ethernet. It's you especially if you're stuck with an old ISP router and you're using a wireless N or a wireless G, wireless G kind of signal. Yeah, just wiring in those devices that you can will give you a massive boost. You see it all too often. You're streaming a 4K movie from Netflix. It either resolutions down to 1080p or 720p and becomes all blocky as the buffering is happening. Just wire your TV up, and then you'll get a much more considered constant speed through to it there. So the message here is twofold. It's as we started on, the philosophy is wire it up if you can. So wire up your TV, your games consoles if you can, but also do think about the router that you've got connecting to the switch. And if that is a very old router, if it is a wireless G, a wireless N, or even a wireless AC network, and you're running a hybrid network, as the last slide dictated, Wi-Fi 6 can give you a lot of benefits on your wireless signals. So to get the most out of your speed, wire it up where you can and get the best router that's available on the market, which at the moment will be a Wi-Fi 6 one. This is me whenever I play FIFA. So
when I play any game these days.
Well, Craig, that's that's because Craig's had a new addition to his family. So Craig's GTA days are well and truly over, unfortunately.
Yes. That's a picture. That's a picture of me picking up the device, picking up the controller, and then hearing the baby talking.
Oh yeah,
No.
yeah.
Okay, so lower latency is actually really important to discuss, and this is one of the big differences between having a wired and wireless connection. It does seem like an odd thing to discuss sometimes, but really it's not just about the size of the pipe, okay? And when I say that, I mean we're talking about a gigabit speed pumping through a cable connection, and let's say we have a Wi-Fi 6 now, and we have a gigabit speed, not that's right there, pumping through at a Wi-Fi connected speed. Here's the thing with wireless connections. They actually use the same type of traffic in the wireless connection as it does down a cable. However, the mechanism that we've used has kind of been shoehorned into wireless. It's the same thing, and it does need a better design, to be honest. But this is what we have, and this is what we have to deal with. Now, how it works is a lot of traffic is very dependent on talking to the device at the end from one to another and getting confirmation of that it's receiving these informations, and it goes in like packets and frames across the network. So imagine you're sending traffic down, maybe you're sending 10 packets down a network. The other device at the end has to respond and say, I've received that packet, send me another one. Sometimes that packet gets lost, and sometimes you have to resend that packet. And that's where Wi-Fi doesn't really have the efficiency of a wired connection, because these frames get lost a lot more in a Wi-Fi environment. And sometimes that's, like we said, down to interference. Sometimes it's just down to the frame type itself. Maybe you're too far away from the access point or the router. Maybe you're right on the edge. Maybe there's something else going on. And sometimes it gets this worse effect, and lots of retransmissions keeps happening. And unfortunately, you're always going to have that on wireless, because that's just how it is.
Yes.
Now, certainly there are things, we'll go into it in a moment, that could improve that, and it certainly is improving all the time. But even now, after all this time and all these new technologies of Wi-Fi, you still can't really beat a cable. It's just the way it is.
No, you really can't. And on the webinar that you weren't on, I talked with Sophie about the latency on my PS5, and via the router, I've got the Wi-Fi 6 router. My latency on FIFA is generally between 7 and 8 milliseconds, which we got like 4 or 5 questions on the webinar was, "Oh, you're lying, you're lying." You said, but it genuinely is. And next time I play, I will take a screenshot and I'll bring it up on the webinar. So, and that's from the wired connection, and obviously the PS5 is a Wi-Fi 6 enabled device, so it does allow for that extra that extra power to be consumed. And yeah, I'll never disconnect that wire. That wire is my secret to the fact that I'm winning more games on FIFA now.
Very good.
Pardon me. So we have a new product. The new DGS-105/108GL. So this is our new Ethernet switch, and pardon me, it's not PoE, but it's a new model that we're doing. It's going to be more cost effective than the current DGS-105. It comes with a metal frame. But then the ports inside them, they are made from plastic. So it's kind of a hybrid between the Go switch I showed earlier as the plastic module and the metal switch we showed earlier. Also, one of the most notable things about this is the size. I had one of the DGS-105GLs. I know Craig hasn't seen it yet, but it's the same size as my iPhone 8. And that doesn't really come across in these images because there's not a comparable object size here, but these switches are absolutely tiny. And if you have somebody who's concerned about aesthetics, and that's the reason that maybe you don't have as much networking equipment as you'd like, this device is going to be so easy to hide. It's going to be very robust because of the metal casing, totally fanless, just like it's just like the DGS-105. So pretty much everything that the DGS-105, 108 do, this is going to do as well. But it's just going to be a more cost-efficient model there, and very, very small and easy to place. Okay, so in situ here, you can see the device in use there. It's powering the laptop, and then one of the other cables is going off somewhere else. Pardon me. So the DGS, it's totally fanless. So when I mentioned earlier, talking about my DGS-108, sorry, how quiet it is, this is this device is going to equal that. It's going to be completely well, as silent as can be. It comes with the standard D-Link green, so it will have reduced energy consumption, and
and just to expand on that D-Link green, Alan. So basically, you've taken the normal power saving methods that comes as a standard. We at D-Link have actually gone beyond that in order to do things like turning off ports, making them shut down when they're not in use, and you actually get it's more, we call it green because it is more green for the environment. You're saving electricity, you're saving energy in the long run, beyond the normal power saving methods that might come on a standard switch.
Yeah, and D-Link green is it's obviously something that we're very committed to. We're even taking steps to look at the packaging that we're using to try and cut down on any wastage there. So definitely committed to the green cause at D-Link. Okay. Before we finish, I think it's very, very important that we just put this slide in, because we can't have 15 slides talking about how brilliant wired networks are and how they're better than wireless, and then not give wireless its own privilege here at the end. Because ultimately, what we're saying here, it goes back to that second slide, which is if you can wire it, if you can't, use Wi-Fi. There's, and there are several advantages to Wi-Fi over having a wired system. So maintenance, it's just easier to repair a wired network. It's easier to identify where a wireless network. It's easier to repair a wireless network. It's easier to detect where the fault is, where the fault begins, and just work on that fault. If you're a neat freak, cable clutter could become a bit of an instance. And also, as well as how cable clutter, cables cost money. So there's two bits in with that. Is that, yes, okay, you could have a mess of cables behind, and you know, if I look behind my TV unit, there's so many cables down there, it gets quite scary. But obviously, all of these Cat5, Cat5e, Cat6 cables that you're running, they all cost money. So that is something that you should take into consideration. Bring your own device. Well, bring your own device is just kind of, we can extend that out to just your friends wanting to connect to your Wi-Fi when they come round to your house, or just bringing an additional device in that doesn't have an Ethernet slot. We talked about the AirBook Pro earlier. They don't have Ethernet slots in them. So if you only have a wired network, you're stopping your guys from working on Macs or iPads unless you buy them additional USB devices.
Yeah, I must admit myself, Alan, I've not catered for anybody coming into my house with a wired connection either. So
Yeah.
I'm the same thing. Is people can come in, they can use the Wi-Fi, can use the guest network, absolutely no problem. But cabling is not an option for anybody.
Craig,
So,
I don't let people on my Wi-Fi. They can use their 4G.
Fair enough.
You can't use my home network to go on TikTok. I've got too much GDPR protected information. Sorry. Yeah. No, you can. I'm only joking. Mobility. I think this is one of the major parts. At the D-Link office, when we used to go to work, very often you'll be in a meeting room and you'll either be doing a webinar, such as me and Craig used to, in a meeting room, and you don't want to be restricted to having to sit where the cable reach is. You might want to sit on the other side. With social distancing, mobility of network and Wi-Fi is going to make it a little bit more useful. So I think those places and those bits in your office where there probably isn't an Ethernet cable that can stretch all the way across to the other side of the meeting room, it's just simpler to go onto the Wi-Fi and access all of those files and details wherever you are. And as we mentioned, guest networks on Wi-Fi. I'd probably say that a guest network will improve your security because you're not allowing them onto the main network. So you're not allowing them into that area that contains your work details, your work laptop, and all of those kind of files. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Any other advantages, Craig, or have I covered most of it off there, do you think?
I think you've covered it. Obviously, guest networks is really the big one, isn't it? We in the business environment, you don't ever already want anybody plugging into your business. So providing guest Wi-Fi. I think really what we want to get the message overall today is that don't just go with Wi-Fi just because it's easy. It's not always the best way. I know it makes life easier in terms of, well, it's connected, that's good enough. Sometimes you can improve your experience by putting just a little bit more effort into it and making sure that what is really good for being cabled with a small little 5-port switch or something like that, or an 8-port switch in a place where you can kind of just bury it so nobody sees it, can really improve the way you live, because it means that you've got faster speeds, nothing's buffering, your work is faster, all these small things that happen. And yes, Wi-Fi is obviously very large. It's getting bigger and better every day. And we love that fact. We certainly drive that fact home every day as well. So until it's as good as a cable, think about having a bit of both. That's what we want to try and come away with.
100%. That's the message that we want people to come away from today's webinar with. But again, I'll go back because I'll touch on it because it's the next slide. Make sure that you've got the latest Wi-Fi. Make sure that you're on Wi-Fi 6, because Wi-Fi 6 isn't the next standard. It is the standard, and I think that's the message that we try and get across. If you're on Wi-Fi 5 or Wi-Fi AC, you're old news, and you should be looking to upgrade just to maximize that. Working from home, streaming, gaming, all of those kind of things, it will just improve the efficiency of all of them. So So we just wanted to, finish up the main webinar here with just a little look at, just a reminder of the Wi-Fi 6 benefits, because we have talked about upgrading your router. So Wi-Fi 6 is 10 gig. So you've got potential speeds of 9.6 gig. I mean, you're probably not going to see them in your home for quite a while. But that is the potential. That's where it goes, and a lot of my message in this has been about future proofing, and that's what Wi-Fi 6 is, and Wi-Fi 6E when it comes just a little bit later on, you'll see more products appearing in that marketplace. But Wi-Fi 6 is here now, and it's a massive upgrade on AC. And one of the reasons why is that efficiency. So the massive improvements in capacity and performance across the network. So more devices are able to connect, more. Pardon me. The main improvement that you'll see with your Wi-Fi 6 is if you're in a device dense household, just those improvements across multiple devices at the same time. We're not going to go into it today, but the MUMIMO and all those other bits will, you'll just see that just across so many devices. Faster throughput. I mean, this is really Craig's area, the throughput, but 40% higher peak data rates for a single client device. That just sounds amazing, Craig.
Yeah, so when we're talking about this, we're kind of talking about extra spatial streams that come with the routers. So like I say, the multi-user MIMO, where it's serving people all at the same time rather than making people wait one after another. Yeah. We have the efficiency that Alan mentioned earlier with the BSS coloring. And there's a lot of technology that's gone into Wi-Fi 6 to try and bring things more kind of on par, close to a wired performance. And this is where we go all the time. We're trying to get that wired performance in a wireless space. Yeah. And that's where that faster throughput comes through, and the efficiency of the traffic that's going through our network. The
OFDMA, of course, which we won't try and remember an acronym for, but I think I can remember. I don't want to make a fool of myself on the webinar when it's
orthogonal frequency division multiplexing, I believe it is.
That's what I was thinking. Trust me. And one of the things that isn't talked about a lot related to target wait time is the extended battery life. So Wi-Fi 6, putting your devices to sleep when you're not using them and then waking them up when they are again. I mean, again, it's another greenish type feature that comes with Wi-Fi 6. So extended battery time on your mobile devices, on your iPad, bits like that. So there's so many benefits to Wi-Fi 6. We won't go into any sort of depth here, but the message is, if you want the optimal network, use wires and upgrade your router to Wi-Fi 6. And just quickly, and this is oh, sorry, yes, I've already said about the better use in dense environments, so we'll skip over that. Just briefly, I just wanted to mention that because we are getting a lot of questions on our live chat on the website. When is the DWR2101 going to be available? It is available now at Amazon. So if you are in the marketplace for a 5G Wi-Fi hotspot, you can hop over to Amazon now, and you can buy one of these. It will be available at other retailers as well. So I mean, there are other retailers other than Amazon, but as so often is, as due to their efficiency, Amazon have this available now. So if you are in the market for 5G, our Wi-Fi 6 hotspot is a very, very, very good device. You can see a great review of it on Forbes.com, which was published recently. So yes, so as soon as we're done with the webinar, you can hop over and have a look at the Amazon listing if you wanted, if you are interested at all. Okay, so a couple of questions have come in for Craig. Let me just pop up the box here.
I'll put on my thinking hat in the meantime.
They don't look too difficult, Craig. I think you'll be able to help the people out with their questions here. First question is, what type of cable should I buy?
Right. Well, that depends what you want to plug in. Normally, a standard Cat5 cable is absolutely fine. They generally go up to at least a gig, so it's not a problem there.
Okay.
If you're just doing data, it's absolutely no problem at all. Now, if you want to increase those speeds, if you're thinking about putting in maybe a network attached storage into your house, and maybe it's like a 10 gig device, you might need to start thinking about upgrading the cables. Something like a Cat6 cable, because you're not going to get that kind of speed through a Cat5 cable, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Now, if you're thinking about an AX access point, the AX access points come with 2.45 gig ports on them, which is designed to power through a very standard cable. That Cat5 cable is absolutely fine. So don't worry about that so much. It's generally the Ethernet cables that come in a box. For most things, it's absolutely going to be fine. It's just those really power users, the prosumers, that you guys might need to be a little bit careful of, because getting 10 gig speeds through those and those servers, very important to use the right cables for those. But don't worry too much about the cables.
Craig, you've been very efficient there, because you've actually answered question 4 as well, which was
Excellent.
Will wide connections help with the transfer speeds for NAS?
Brilliant. There we go.
There you go. 2 in 1. Well done, Craig.
Covered.
Second question, and I'll tie this in with the 8th question as well, just to get them both at the same time, because they are related. How would I wire up areas far away from the router, i.e. upstairs? And then the next question was, should I get a professional installer to come in and put in more RJ45 ports? So they're kind of related. So I thought, yeah.
So I've helped a lot of people over the years with areas where they've really struggled. One I've done very recently, actually, and it's still to this day a bit of an issue for them, because what they have is they have 3 floors, and the first floor is where the internet comes in, and the third floor is where they're working from home. And it's been very difficult with trying to get a broadcast. And we actually sell wireless mesh devices where we have multiple stations, and sometimes these are very good and they can cover a house. Sometimes it's so awkward to try and get to a place because there's just too many floors. You can't broadcast, you can't repeat even.
Yeah.
And unfortunately it happens. That's the thing about networking, even for home environments. Sometimes, no matter what you try, it goes wrong. There's nothing you can do. And unfortunately, sometimes that means biting the bullet, getting somebody in and running a few cables. And what they might do is they might chase those cables up, maybe your chimney or something at the back of your chimney, and put them through your floorboards, drop them down from your attic or something like that, and lo and behold, you've now got a cabled connection going into the place where you're doing your work, and you buy an access point and it's done. You're finished.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's worth it. It's worth doing, because it means that you can plug an access point in there. The broadcasting is different from that part of the house. Maybe you're trying to work down the bottom end of a garden or something like that, and you might want to run a cable. So it's really how much you're struggling. I mean, certainly try going for these repeater devices and wireless meshes. You might be lucky enough. For a lot of people, they're really great, and they work very, very well in that wireless environment, but it's not for everybody. Unfortunately, there are those few cases where really, running that one cable can be very handy for you.
That's the thing with the cover units and the mesh units, and we've got a new range coming probably end of May. So Craig and I will be doing a webinar on cover units and dealing AI in a few weeks' time. But what people forget is that the units have to communicate with each other in order to be able to amplify that signal. So mesh is brilliant, and we love it, but it has to be in the right circumstances. It's not a solution that will work for every house, especially if you've got a Faraday cage in your house like Craig, or if you've got one of those very strangely designed old houses with nooks and crannies, and if it covers a lot of space going up and across. So yes, we strongly recommend trying out solutions like mesh, and then if you can't, call a professional 100%, because they'll sort out your problems. And anything that it costs you in money, you will save in pulling out your hair. So that's probably a good
Yeah.
for you.
And like we've been through today, you just simply put once you've got that cable, you just need one cable, and you can put a PoE switch or a standard 8-port switch, 5-port switch on the end of it, and lo and behold, you've now got a whole unique way of connecting all of your devices in an area that you didn't have before. So it can be very handy, very handy.
Yeah. I'm going to combine questions for M5 as well, Craig, and ask you both of these at the same time. Is it worth getting a smart switch for home use, and is it worth looking at more than gigabit speeds for home use? So again, two related questions there, but probably with slightly as I'd imagine.
So we are coming to a point now where a lot of people, and when I say a lot of people, I'm all about the prosumers. They do like their own storage, their network attached storage, and they might back up their movies or download movies, however they do it, into these network drives. And those people definitely need 10 gig speeds to access these devices, so they can pull files very quickly. A lot of people working from home, they might have big files, certainly imaging companies and things like that. Now, I've worked with some sites before, some businesses, where they pull 1 and 2 gigabyte files every couple of minutes in order to manipulate these files onto their large stations. These poor people have been working from home, and they've gone from these 10 gig environments. I'm sure you're about to say that you're in the same place, Alan.
I can attest to the size of some of these PSD files that I have to pull off the system. They're massive, absolutely massive. Yeah,
and I feel so sorry for these people, because it must be so frustrating to be able to do your daily job in that kind of environment. Absolutely, I think those kind of people definitely need 10 gig in that space. For sure.
What about
the rest?
Switch?
Smart switch is very good for the security element. So if your job is absolutely essential, and maybe you've got a larger house, like I said earlier, maybe you've got kids that like to, that might be a more mature kids. I mean, certainly there are a lot of 18 plus students and things living at home, and they've certainly got their own way of using their own things. You have to protect your network as well. So having a smart switch means that you can actually split off all of your traffic for your business and still provide your guest network or your other network for your household members as well. So the smart switch can really work for that kind of environment too, by keeping those separate from each other and having your own independent network. Because what that means is you don't have to buy additional access points. You can use the same access point, and then you can have multiple SSIDs that are broadcasting from it around the house. So you can still roam around the house, you can still do your things in that kind of environment, but you're still using the same hardware, but you're just using it differently. And that's really where it can benefit you.
Yeah, I think there as well. Not all smart switches are super expensive. The DGS-10500 range is very cost effective. Slightly different to the 1210 range, which is more effective. So not all smart switches are created equal. That's what I'm trying to say there. So there are more cost-effective options available, like the 1100 series versus the 12 series.
Yeah. I think the DGS-10500 series that we sell is very, very good for that kind of environment. And to be honest, for the rest of us, an unmanaged switch is absolutely fine. If you're not too worried about, or maybe you don't have such sensitive files, or maybe you don't have kids that are old enough to cause issues, or you're happy with how they are and how they work, it's absolutely fine. You just have an unmanaged switch to increase your ports, and off you go.
Yeah. So last question for the day, Craig, and we'll wrap it up. We've managed to do an hour as usual, so we've overrun as usual.
Okay.
This is a good question. If I have a wired connection, will it trump my quality of service settings? So who gets the connection first, the wire or the device that I've selected as the priority on my quality of service settings?
So quality of service can work in a couple of ways, but it really doesn't actually look at the transmission method in that regard. So, for example, it might be IP-based quality of service, where you would assign an IP address to a device, and any transmission, whether it's wired or wireless, coming from that device, will be over everything else on the network. There's also quality of service in terms of your phone, and some switches do cost of service automatically for phones and VoIP like that. Certainly the phone is very likely going to be a wired connection in that case, but really it's the traffic and how it's broadcast that's going to increase that. So don't worry too much about how quality of service works, whether it's wired or wireless. It's going to be served the same way. It's going to prioritize the traffic depending on that, not the actual broadcast type.
Fantastic. Yeah, I wondered why I didn't know the answer to that. I've never seen that question before. good question there. Thanks for that one. That's pretty much it for this week. I'd say thanks to everybody for joining and putting up for me and Craig for an hour as usual. Hope that you've got something from today's section. If there are any more questions, the details have been up on the screen for a little while there. The main email address, uki-sales@dlink.com. You can give us a buzz on 0208 955 9000 anytime. We do have a live chat, which I will put the link for on the next webinar. I meant to put it in this one, but I have remembered now, and it's a little bit late to make the slide now. So we do have a live chat, and you can come straight through to our very helpful salespeople or myself. I'm on it most of the time as well. So yes, we will be back. And it's not 100% sure yet, but we should be back on April the 14th, where we will be going through through Nucleus in some way, shape, or form, because we've got some new updates on Nucleus, which have been very good for the market, and possibly some updates on the analytics software plugins, which is very interesting. We may have a special guest, but I'm not going to go into any more detail because it's not confirmed yet. But we're going to try our very best. It looks like because we had to cancel the April the 7th webinar because the SD-WAN has been delayed and we don't have the information on it yet. So we might push that Nucleus webinar back to the 14th and do more on analytics and some of the recent additions, such as the app and a few other bits that have been announced. So should be a good one, but watch this space. I'll send an email out to let you know exactly what's happening on that one. Okay, so
excellent.
Yes. Everyone, thanks for your time. Hopefully you will join us again for the next webinar. Hope to see you all soon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.